Let's talk food and wine in Tonia's kitchen. Here is Tonia King.
My guest today is Dr. Michael Compton, and we're talking about your brand new book, Veggie Smarts. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Tanya, for having me.
I love this. A doctor and a farmer. You don't usually see those two combinations.
That's true. I'm a doctor in midlife, and having grown up on a farm, there's a saying that you've probably heard, and that is that you can take a boy off the farm, but you can't take the farm out of the boy. And so as part of my midlife crisis, no, I'm not going to call it a midlife crisis. I'm going to call it a midlife burst of energy.
There you go.
I built myself an organic farm in the Hudson Valley of New York.
It's great. You're so into it, and you still are doing your practice, correct? You're doing both.
Yes, I am doing both. My practice nowadays is research. You know, I'm an academic at Columbia University, and I do lots of research, which means I write grant proposals, we carry out studies, and then we write lots of research articles and book chapters and those sorts of things. But I did see patients for many, many years in both inpatient and outpatient settings.
Have you always been a vegetarian? Are you vegan as well?
Tanya, to be quite honest, I'm neither a vegan nor a strict vegetarian. I do believe strongly in a whole foods, plant predominant eating pattern. Whole foods means trying to steer clear of ultra-processed foods as much as possible and eating whole foods. And plant predominant, of course, means that I believe that eating plant-based foods is the healthy way to go, but I'm not opposed to eating fish or, having eggs for breakfast. I grew up on a dairy farm, and so I still drink milk. But I am predominantly a vegetarian, especially for breakfast and lunch, and I lean toward a flexitarian or pescatarian for dinner.
Sounds great. The book, I find it entertaining. Like, I love the whole story about all your cabbage getting eaten up by different varmints or whatever, or by your neighbor who took it or something. Give us a little bit of a background of what's in the book.
Sure. So the book is really, it's a little book about a little farm. It's sort of not quite a memoir, but it details my journey in building a small organic certified veggie farm, and all of my experiences, the great successes, the occasional failures that comes along with farming, and everything I learned along the way about all of the vegetables. I had to get smart about veggies because I was now growing food, not just for myself, but for lots of farmers market customers and CSA farm share members. So I really needed to get smart about my veggies. And in doing so, at the same time, I was becoming board certified in lifestyle medicine. And so I learned a lot about nutrition. These two things collided, becoming a farmer and becoming a nutritionist. And I wanted to spread the word about veggies so that people can really get smart about their veggies.
I think that's so important because most doctors don't seem to lean towards the nutrition part of things. So it's really great that you've really uncovered so much knowledge in that department. And it sounds like you really have a lot of fun growing your veggies.
Absolutely. I was born with two green thumbs, passed down to me from my granny. And even though I grew up on a dairy farm, I really was always drawn to the garden. And so I really care for these plants. The more that I care for them, the more productive and generous they are in terms of giving us great produce. But you're also right about so many physicians just don't know enough about nutrition. We don't learn a lot about nutrition in medical school. And so for me, it was a matter of having to circle back around and really get smart about nutrition as I was growing all these veggies.
That is just so important. And you talk about some specific vegetables, and it's interesting about your concept of 8 on a plate. Tell us about that.
Sure. So we've all heard that we should be eating 5 servings a day of fruits and vegetables, or that we should, eat the rainbow, meaning eat lots of colorful vegetables. But another way to go about it is to eat vegetables from across 8 different families of plants. You know, there are more than 400 families of flowering plants, more than 400. But only about 8 of them give us all of our veggies, those 8 families of flowering plants. And so many of us don't know what those 8 families are. But as it turns out, if you eat veggies across the 8 families, you're getting a broad array of minerals and vitamins and phytonutrients, because each family of plants has a different constellation of those micronutrients and phytonutrients. And so I think it's important for us to understand those eight families and how the vegetables orient themselves within those 8 families.
So different groups provide different nutrition. So the whole cabbage family, for example, what is that part of?
That's the Brassicas, as I call them. Each family of each of these 8 families has a surname, if you will. And so the Brassicas are a very large family of siblings and cousins, like cabbage, cauliflower, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, kale, mizuna, watercress, arugula, and so many others. It's a very large family of veggies, and they all tend to give us sulfur-containing phytonutrients, as opposed to some of the other families. And so I think it's important for us to eat brassicas, ideally one a day. And just as we eat the other 7 families, which are the alliums, like onions, the legumes, which are the peas and the beans and the dried beans, the Chenopods. Have you heard that one before?
No, I was just going to say, what is that?
The Chenopods. So that is those are superfoods. They really are superfoods. We're talking here, it's a pretty small family, the Chenopods, but we're talking here about beets, beet greens, spinach, and Swiss chard. They're
Yummy.
all superfoods. We ought to be eating one of those a day. And then there are the Aster Greens, the Umbellifers, the Cucurbits, and the Nightshades. Those are the 8 families of flowering plants that give us our veggies. And again, we need to be eating across those families. So it's not a matter of counting calories or even counting veggies. It's in my mind, it's about counting the families.
You can do so much with so many different veggies. So my next question to you is, do you like to cook?
Absolutely. When you grow this much produce, you have to like to cook, because you want to eat what you've grown. It just tastes so much better, and it's more gratifying to eat what you've grown as opposed to eating grocery store produce that's been trucked in from 2,000 miles away, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And so yes, I do love to cook. My recipes tend to be relatively simple. I give 16 of my recipes in the book, Veggie Smarts, but they're not chef-type recipes. They're just, farm-to-table recipes, if you will.
Oh, that's great. So let's get into some of those. Why don't you share one or two with me?
Sure. The first one that I give in the book is simply a recipe for roasted kohlrabi. Roasted kohlrabi. Now, I had never heard of kohlrabi until I built my farm and started growing it, because I saw the other farmers were growing it, and I felt that if I'm taking produce to the farmer's market, I should have kohlrabi in the early spring and then again in the late fall. And so in the book, because I didn't know how to prepare kohlrabi, I give a simple recipe for slicing it up and sprinkling some Parmesan on, because like the other brassicas, it can be slightly bitter. And so adding some sweetness or some fat, in this case Parmesan, will reduce that bitterness. Yeah, roasted kohlrabi with Parmesan, and throw some fresh herbs on.
Any olive oil or anything on there?
Yes, I do toss the wedges of kohlrabi in olive oil.
It's the Italian in me coming out, you see. I need to have the olive oil.
Exactly. I love cooking with olive oil. It's my, oil of choice. And I love using hard cheeses like Parmesan and the others, when roasting veggies.
Yeah.
One of my favorites is escarole. Again, I had never really gotten familiar with escarole until I started growing it, and it is a delight to grow escarole because the heads, it sort of looks like lettuce. It's not lettuce. It sort of looks like lettuce, and on the farm, the escarole comes out flawlessly. It's perfect. There's not a single bug bite on the head, and it's really a beautiful, beautiful plant. And so I want to cut it, take it straight to the kitchen, chop it, and saute it in some olive oil and some sliced onions. Once it's wilted, then I open up a can of white beans, put the beans in, and let it simmer for maybe 15 minutes, and you've got delicious white beans with escarole. The onions in there, that's from the Alliums.
Yep.
You mentioned, the white beans, the escarole. There may have been some other greens in there from the Brassicas. It's super nutritious when you're combining that many veggies.
I also read that you also are a big fennel person. I am as well. Love fennel. I grew up eating just raw fennel. We used to dip it in olive oil with a little salt and pepper in there.
You are Italian, aren't you?
Oh, yes, I am. I love to eat. I love to cook. And I love to talk about food. The book is just loaded with so much information about so many vegetables that I think we don't even think about how they benefit us.
Exactly, because, I think we settle into a handful of vegetables. In doing so, we inadvertently ignore so many others. I could list, and I do in the book, obviously, 60 different veggies across these 8 families. And we should really strive to eat, a diversity of veggies because they do give us different micronutrients, which are vitamins and minerals, but also importantly phytonutrients, which are really, disease-fighting compounds, antioxidants, they're anti-inflammatory, etc. And by the way, in the book, I also share a number of sort of quirky scientific facts about specific veggies, like I explain why President Bush, genetically speaking, despised broccoli. Why is that? Why did he despise broccoli? Well, I put forth the hypothesis that he is what we call a PTC taster. The genetics of his taste buds were such that the Brassicas tasted bitter to him. And in about 75% of people, they're able to taste this chemical called PTC, and the Brassicas have a very, very similar sulfur chemical that causes them to taste bitter. Now, 25% of us are mutants, myself included. We can't taste PTC. And so for us, broccoli and kale, even broccoli rabe, etc., they don't really taste bitter. And so we tend to like them much more than people who find them bitter. But again, there are things that you can do in the kitchen to reduce the bitterness. It's a matter of how they're prepared. Evidently, President Bush's mother didn't do a great job preparing broccoli when he was a kid, and that's why he absolutely refused to eat it as president. But I give other quirky facts, like exactly how it is that onions make us cry, exactly why it is that beans make us fart, and how it is that beets can make our pee pink.
Right. It really is amazing. And so you've dug deep into this so that you can open it up for us to understand a little bit better.
I hope so. The point is really to help people get smart about veggies, and it's not just knowledge. It's really a mindset. It's about wanting to understand our food better, where it comes from, how it's grown, why local is important. And it's really a mindset. It's a commitment to yourself around eating a healthier diet, which in this case includes a diversity of vegetables.
So I just want to ask you quickly, because you mentioned broccoli rabe. There's broccoli rabe and broccolini. So What do you think the difference is? I cooked with broccoli rabe, and I must say I also felt it bitter. I don't know if it was just the bunch that I grabbed. So now I'm always leaning towards broccolini and regular broccoli. So give me the difference of all those.
They're like so many others of the brassicas. They broccoli rabe and broccolini are really what I call fraternal twins. They're in the exact same species. They're basically the same plant, but they're shaped differently.
Hmm.
So, for example, collards, as you know, are large green leaves. Cabbage is basically the same plant. It's the same species, but those leaves are turned inward and they form a head. Broccoli is in the same species. It's very, very similar. They're not just cousins. They're not just siblings, but they're literally fraternal twins, if you will. And so broccoli rabe and broccolini are in that same group. They're very, very similar plants. I would say that they are among the most bitter of the brassicas, but again, you deal with that in terms of how you prepare them. And
Interesting.
olive oil, Parmesan, etc., is going to help.
Interesting. We are talking with Dr. Michael Compton about his brand new book called Veggie Smarts. How would you suggest for people that really aren't big veggie eaters to kind of open up a little bit more?
Yeah, I think that so many of us struggle with what's called food neophobia. We tend to eat what we eat, and we're a little bit afraid of new types of food. So when we're in the produce section, if we see a vegetable that we're not familiar with, we tend to just pass by rather than giving it a try. And I would argue that we should try all of the different vegetables, including the ones we've never eaten before. Give them a try, not just one, but 3 tries. Find some recipes. There are so many great veggie cookbooks out there. Find some recipes. Try each of these new veggies 3 times. And see if it might become part of your diet going forward. Kohlrabi, for example, So there's so many underappreciated veggies. Swiss chard, one of the very healthiest things you can eat.
Now, the other thing that was funny in your book, fake hamburgers with laxatives. So
Yeah.
tell me what you've discovered in that department.
Well, many people are moving toward a plant predominant eating pattern and trying to decrease, animal-derived foods like meats. I think that's a great move, not only for our individual health, but for planetary health and sustainability. However, just because you're not eating animal-based foods doesn't necessarily mean that it's healthy food. There are many ultra-processed foods that are clearly not healthy and not really derived from plants other than soybeans and field corn, GMO soybeans and GMO field corn. So when I moved toward vegetarianism several years ago, I was trying out the fake meats and was fairly satisfied. But then I looked at the ingredients list, and I realized that this is quintessential ultra-processed food with all sorts of ingredients that I would never have in my kitchen or never find in the pantry. And so it is ultra-processed food, and I would argue that we need to be eating whole foods and trying our best. It's difficult given our food environment, but trying our best to steer clear of ultra-processed foods, and that includes fake meats. And yes, they do often contain an ingredient called methyl cellulose, which when I was reading that list of ingredients, I said, gee, that rings a bell. I feel like I've heard that from medical school so many years ago. Yeah, it's actually an over-the-counter laxative.
Oh my goodness.
And so it's used in some forms of fake meat, not to bulk up the poop, but to bulk up the patty.
We're talking with Dr. Michael Compton. His brand new book is called Veggie Smarts. A doctor and farmer grows and savors 8 families of vegetables. It's been a pleasure chatting with you. How do we find you on social media?
On social media, I have a very limited social media presence, but if you like to see pictures of gorgeous produce, follow me at SRSR Farm. And you'll see lots of pretty pictures of produce. I also have a website, www.drcompton.health. And so check it out there. And please think about getting Veggie Smarts.
Sounds like a plan. Thank you again for your time today.
Thank you so much, Tanya. It's been a delight.
Thanks for tuning in. We hope you'll subscribe to this podcast as we continue to take you around the world of food and wine on Tonia's Kitchen.